all the leaders of education on the dais, entrepreneurs, industrialists, all the participants for participating in this today's seminar. First of all, let me really thank Hans India to take an initiative in organizing a, a big program on National Education Policy 2020. This National Education Policy 2020 has been continuously discussed over several months now, and now the universities, educational institutions, governments, state governments, etc., have to gear up for the challenge. And whatever has been said in national education policy, which has been formulated after a very series of meetings and greater deliberations, now the nation has got a policy, education policy, to lead the educational masses in this country. Lot of emphasis has been made on various aspects. And if I say that, you will be surprised that most of these things have been continuously being deliberated and discussed all over the country for several years. But this is a final culmination of thinking process which has to be now go into implementation stage, because the world now is heading in a different direction technologically, and the people have got more aspirations compared to the generations where we come from. We never had this kind of a competition, nor this kind of aspirations. But today, the students, those who are getting educated in the universities, need to be more dynamic, more appropriately learn the skills, acquire the skills, not only in one area, but in many areas. Before, really talking about what national education policy is and how this can be implemented, what are the impediments, and what are the advantages, etc., let me briefly tell you how this country has moved on the educational front. What are the different policies has directed the education system in this country. Starting from our independence in the 1947, when we got the independence, the leaders of the country started thinking that the future of this country, the destiny of the country, basically remains in the classroom. Therefore, they wanted to give more importance to the education, and in 1948, Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan was appointed as the chairman with a 10 members committee, out of which 2 from American universities and 1 from British University. And the top educationalists of the country have been pulled up, and they were asked to give the direction to this country how this education should be, developed in this country. What will be the boundaries of development, and how the government should go about. Thus, that commission was called Radhakrishnan Commission. So Radhakrishnan Commission main focus was on higher education, how to improve the higher education, how to make higher education accessible to the people of this country. You know that India is a very diverse country, having different kinds of equations, religion, caste, and the other aspects. So to cover up all this, to make them in a single flow, to make them to its destiny, what Radhakrishnan suggested, that the university education in this country has to be strengthened first. And this committee visited almost 25 universities which were existing in those days, and most of the universities were following the British system. But practically, British system may not be useful for this country like having this kind of a large diversity. Therefore, they studied the system in all the 25 universities and they came up with a policy and suggested and they made three important recommendations that the recommendation for setting up a university grants commission in this country. This was the first step for the, guiding the higher education in this country. Therefore, they suggested that the University Grants Commission should be established, and this has become a, exercise, and University Grants Commission has come into the force in 1956. And the second one was, he was outlining about the autonomy of the university. The earlier universities never had an autonomy. They were working under the government directions. So the Radhakrishnan Commission felt that the university should be given freedom, both academic autonomy, financial autonomy, and administrative autonomy. Until and unless we have this kind of an autonomy given to the universities, universities cannot excel and universities cannot produce the required educationalists of this country. The third point which they, they were very serious about was the integration of secondary and higher secondary education into the university system. Because these systems were working independently, isolatedly. So this commission suggested that the government should look into the aspect of integrating secondary and higher education, secondary and higher secondary education. It should be integrated such a way that the flow will be very smooth into the university system. So realizing this, the government of India in 1952 has appointed another committee which is known as the Secondary Education Commission, headed by Dr. Lakshmanaswamy Mudaliar, who was the Vice Chancellor of Madras University, to suggest ways and means to integrate the secondary and higher education into the stream of the university education. So they seriously did the exercise and took almost 10 years. Imagine, they took almost 10 years, and after 10 years, in 1963, they submitted a very detailed proposal and recommendation to the government how this higher education has to be modified and how it has to be linked with the secondary and higher secondary education in this country. So there, the commission reports suggested that there should be a diversification of school courses and establishment of multi-purpose higher schools. The multi-purpose high schools has to be established in this country because the higher education was not focusing on certain things. See, what Mudaliar committee felt that the moment you come out of the school, because most of the dropouts were there at the school level, you know that higher secondary school level, and very little percentage of the students are going into the higher education. Even as on today, if you look at what will be the growth rate of higher education, it is very small. And very less number of students are going for higher education, even after 75 years of independence. So, in 1963, they suggested that there should be a way for the people, for the students to go out and, earn their job or earn their, they should be in a position to establish themselves in the society by working in some way or other. Therefore, the multipurpose education was advised by Mudaliar committee so that the students can, those who are dropped out at higher education level, higher secondary level, they can take up a job. So in multi-purpose education, because I know what multi-purpose education, because I am a product of that. When we were doing our higher education, we were in the multi-purpose education system, where we were taught almost all the subjects, including craft, arts, and painting, and several things were taught at the high school level, so that even if you drop out, go into the system, go into the university system, you can really, work out. So that was the system which was emphasized by the Mudaliar Commission, and then The Mudaliar Commission also suggested that the vocational course or vocational system has to be developed, like polytechnics and vocational education has to be introduced. And they also suggested that there should be a three-language policy in the country, so that the students should be allowed to learn the three languages, namely English, Hindi, as well as one of your regional language, like Telugu in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil in Tamil Nadu, like that. The regional languages were allowed to be studied. And they also suggested the implementing the examination system, implementing teaching education system, etc. But the focus was not on women education. This was the major drawback of Mudaliar Commission. And outcome of this Mudaliar Commission recommendations, the government realized the importance of how the education system at the school level has to be. Therefore, in order to do that exercise, they started NCERT. When Radhakrishnan, because of committee, you got the University Grants Commission in 1956, and because of Mudaliar Commission, the government has established another feather in the education, that is NCERT, National Council for Educational Research and Training. Subsequently, another commission was formulated in 1964 to 66, and it was headed by the then UGC chairman D.S. Kothari, and which is popularly known as Kothari Commission. And Kothari Commission examined the school education system and higher education system, suggested several modifications, and they said the country needs the free and compulsory education for the students from 6th class to the 14th, 6 years to the 14th year. And the Kothari Commission put a lot of emphasis, and they said that until and unless the focus is made on science and mathematics, the science and mathematics should be made compulsory at the school level, so that the students can acquire enough knowledge so that they can easily pass into the university system. And another policy called the National Education Policy, which was started in 1968, and a lot of discussion was there in the parliament, and because of that, Indira Gandhi proposed that there should be a national education policy. That was the first time they thought of having a national education policy, and they wanted to implement certain things, and very few things were added in that, and they suggested that the education should be imparted in the mother tongue rather than having a language policy. The emphasis was on to have the teaching in the mother tongue, and this education policy did not take up much very seriously because of the financial crunch in those days and several other factors. But when Rajiv Gandhi came to the power in 1968, 86, they started national education policy under the dynamic leadership of the P.V. Narasimha Rao, who was the MHRD minister at that time. So this policy basically made certain things which has to be focused, and they were the modernization of the role of IT education, IT in the education. So from there on, how the IT education has been improved, how the universities are able to impart education through, and so that the many IT professions are produced today. And it is the restructuring of the teachers' education, early childhood care, then women empowerment, adult literacy, and autonomy to the universities and colleges. And this was the time where real autonomy was given to the universities, and even colleges were also allowed to come under this particular education policy. So culmination of all these exercises, which has been carried out for last 60 years, the final exercise was carried out 2-3 years back when the new government came into power, and this policy is known as National Education Policy 2020. The main emphasis on this is the quality, affordability, equity, access and accountability. These are the major focus of this committee, and this committee suggested several principles which are the flexibility, and then you have no hard separation between the subjects, curriculum and extracurricular activities, multidisciplinary education, conceptual understanding, critical thinking, ethical values, teachers as the heart of the learning process, and the strong public education system. These are the some of these things which has been emphasized in that, and each one of them has got very, serious thinking, and the implementation takes little more time, but I'm very happy that Jawaharlal Technological University has already initiated the National Education Policy. In recent Board of Studies exercise, we have incorporated all the aspects, most of the aspects which are suggested in the National Education Policy has been incorporated. From this year, from this academic year, the university is going to implement in true spirit whatever the changes we are going to do, and I think this will be not only the Jawaharlal Technological University was the first technological university in the country, but it will be the first technological university to implement national education policy in toto. Thank you very much.